get started into this YouTube video, first off, everything in this video is allegedly, and second of all, I'm not going to do a complete deep dive of conservation and all that. I've already made a full-on YouTube video about, conservation and colonization and all that. If you want to check out the full video about, like, environmentalism, wildlife conservation, colonization history and all that, I'm going to put the video on the screen if you want a full deep dive of this whole entire industry, but in this video I'm only talking about the WWF, the World Wildlife Fund. I'm not going to be talking about any of the other, animal, conservation industries or whatever. If you want to see the full video on environmentalism, the history of environmentalism, colonization, and wildlife conservation as a whole, the video is going to be on the screen right now. So yeah. History of the WWF. The WWF, aka the World Wildlife Fund, was founded in 1961 by Prince Philip and Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, which is a massive, huge red flag because we already know that the royal families exploit people and live like parasites. And on top of all that, they commit some of the biggest atrocities when it comes to colonization and imperialism all across the globe and the world and the earth. According to the WWF, in their own words, their mission, our mission is to conserve nature and reduce the most pressing threats to the diversity of life on Earth. WWF works to help local communities conserve the natural resources they depend on, transform markets and in policies towards sustainability, and protect and restore species and their natural habitats. Our efforts ensure that the value of nature is reflected in decision-making from a local to global scale. They are doing, they constantly do greenwashing campaigns with the leading companies that are compliant in harming wildlife, since capitalism puts profits over the lives of animals, people, and Mother Earth herself. Here are some of the claims against the WWF that I'm going to be talking about. Again, the WWF receives large donations from massive capitalist corporations, to greenwash their businesses, aka capitalism, capitalism companies. They work with them knowingly knowing that capitalism is the #1 cause of wildlife extinction and biodiversity loss, along with the climate change crisis. Again, about Coca-Cola's disgusting fake news mascot / the hypocrisy behind Coca-Cola's attempt to save the polar bear. When the holiday season comes around, Coca-Cola has reintroduced their beloved images of polar bears drinking Coke cans this holiday season. However, they have accompanied those familiar advertisements with an environmental spin, putting emphasis on saving the polar bears from climate change, which is hypocritical in itself and pure fake news propaganda, because capitalism is the #1 cause of climate change crisis, and there have been, obviously these companies put profits over the lives of their employees, people, and animals and all that, so it makes no sense. Black lives don't matter to imperialists, a case of racism via conservationists. A local African man, after a 7-year-old son was shot dead by a park guard, the boy and his father were gathering medicinal plants for their culture and their practices with his father in Kaouzi-Baji National Park in the Democratic Republic of Congo. An anti-poaching squad opened fire on them. The father managed to escape with severe wounds, while son Mobe Christian was killed at the scene. The guards received logistics support, funding, and training from the Wildlife Conservation Society, WCS, a big conservation body which is a parent organization of the New York Bronx Zoo. According to international law, the WCS's own human rights policy, Indigenous peoples' consent is required for conservation projects on their land. Between the 1960s and 1980s, authorities violently and illegally evicted up to 6,000 Native Africans from the park. For a lot of conservationists and their organizations, Black lives don't matter. In the name of conservation, agents supported by world-renowned nature groups like the Wildlife Conservation Society, the WCS, and the World Wildlife Fund, the WWF, have tortured and murdered dozens of innocent people, including children, the elderly, and people with disabilities. Eco guards, park rangers, and even government officials have burned down villages. bulldozed house, gang-raped women, stolen possessions, beat up people, and maimed people for life. People simply don't believe this is happening because they cannot fathom how cuddly panda conservationists could possibly be guilty of racism and violence. The WWF and the WCS and other international environmental nonprofits have been aware of these atrocities for many years, as they continue to fund, equip, and train the perpetrators that kill and murder innocent black lives. When confronted with evidence, the conservation capitalist giants simply arrange cover-ups and try to cover up the situation and hide it from people. Typical of these imperialists, the WWF for nature is keeping evidence of brutal crimes under wrap. Anti-poaching guards have gang-raped pregnant women and tortured villagers, according to the charity's own investigators. Journalists have been threatened and their identities have been concealed for exposing these heinous crimes that they were trying to cover up. Conservation suffers from the racist delusion that non-white people in Africa and Asia don't know how to look after their own land and cannot be trusted with animals